There is a specific gravity to grief that has aged for a decade. It's no longer a sharp, shattering pain. It's a cold, dense stone you carry in the center of your chest, a permanent part of your architecture. My father's name was Arthur the Veil. He was a history teacher with laugh lines and a heart condition he managed with pills and stubborn optimism. The stone in my chest is inscribed with a date, a medical term, and a name. Dr. Robert Kane. Misdiagnosis. It was a routine visit for shortness of breath. Dr. Kane, assured and brisk in his pressed white coat, dismissed it as latent-set asthma, aggravated by pollen. He prescribed an inhaler. 2 days later, my father collapsed in his classroom between the Napoleonic Wars and the Industrial Revolution. A massive, fatal heart attack. The autopsy showed arteries like clogged, ancient pipes. The inhaler was still in his pocket, unused. The coroner was clear. It was not a mystery. It was a missed call. A catastrophic failure of basic, diligent care. My world split in two, before and after before. I was a driven medical student, inspired by my father's curiosity about the world. After, I was a fury in a lab coat. My grief didn't paralyze me. It weaponized me. I became a cardiothorax surgeon. Not just a good one, but a renowned one. I built a reputation on a fanatical, almost cruel thoroughness. I hunted for details other doctors glossed over. I was obsessed with the margins of error, the shadows where mistakes hide. My hospital, Mercy General, became my fortress, and every patient who walked through its doors was treated with the meticulous care my father had been denied. It was my living memorial. For 10 years. I carried the stone and the name. I never looked Dr. Kane up. I didn't need to. He was a ghost in the machine of my ambition, a negative inspiration. I assumed he was still out there, practicing, maybe retired, blissfully unaware of the seismic rift he'd caused in one family's universe. Then, the residency applications for the news cycle landed on my desk. As chief of surgery, I had final say on the elite cardiology fellowship. It was the most coveted spot in the region. I was reviewing the final shortlist, the top 5 candidates, brilliant minds from top-tier schools. And there, third on the list, was a name that made the cold stone in my chest drop like an anchor. Applicant: Julian Kane, medical school, Stanford. Summa cum laude, undergraduate, Yale. Personal statement excerpt: my father, a dedicated general practitioner for 35 years, instilled in me a profound respect for the sacred doctor-patient relationship. His commitment to community care is my guiding light. The words blurred. The air in my high-rise office turned thin. Julian Kane, son of Robert. The dedication was a punch to the gut. Guiding light. My father's light had been snuffed out by that man's negligence. A storm of emotions I thought I'd masterfully buried erupted. White-hot rage, a bitter, ironic sense of cosmic joke-telling, and beneath it, a terrifying, cold curiosity. Did the son know? Did he have any idea what his dedicated father had done? Was this some twisted attempt at atonement, walking into the lion's den? Or was it just blind, stupid chance? I pulled up Julian Kane's full file. His photo showed a young man in his late 20s, clean-cut, intelligent eyes, an earnest smile. He looked good, promising. His scores were flawless. His letters of recommendation glowed. On paper, he was perfect. He was everything a mentor would want, and I hated him for it. I could have simply relined his name, rejected him with a form letter. No one would question it. The competition was fierce, but it felt insufficient. It felt like hiding. For 10 years, I had wielded the truth of my father's death like a private weapon. Now the universe had delivered the son of the man who caused it to my doorstep, asking for my blessing. My mentorship was too pointed to ignore. A plan began to form, not from a place of hot anger, but from that cold, dense stone of grief. It was meticulous. Surgical. I approved the shortlist, including Julian Kane, for the final interview stage. I would meet him. I would look into the eyes of Robert Kane's legacy. The day of the interviews arrived. The first 4 candidates were excellent, nervous, eager. I was professional, probing, detached. Then Julian Kane entered. He carried himself with a calm confidence that was unnervingly familiar. who was the ghost of his father's professional assurance. But tempered with youthful openness, he shook my hand firmly. Dr. Vale, it's an honor. Your work on minimally invasive valve replacements is groundbreaking. Thank you, I said, my voice even. I gestured for him to sit. Your record is impressive. Julian, Stanford, Yale, a lot of privilege, a lot of expectation. He nodded, not arrogantly, but with acknowledgement. I've been very fortunate. I try to honor it with hard work. And your father? I asked, leaning back in my chair. My fingers, a dedicated GP, you wrote. Did he ever talk about his mistakes? The cases that kept him up at night? The question was a scalpel, slipped in gently. Julian's composed expression faltered for a microsecond. He wasn't expecting this. He talked about the weight of responsibility, that you remember the losses as keenly as the wins. That's why he was so thorough. The word was an acid drip in my soul. My father died because Robert Kane was not thorough. I see, I said, my tone neutral. And what brings you to cardiology? Of all the fields. He leaned forward, his passion evident. It's the definitive intersection of mechanical precision and human mystery. One clear, correct diagnosis, one perfect procedure, can give someone decades of life. There's a clarity to it. Clarity. Yes. The clarity of an autopsy report. The clarity of a misdiagnosis. I interviewed him for the full hour. I was scrupulously fair. I asked the same technical, ethical, and situational questions I asked everyone. He answered brilliantly. He was, on every objective level, the top candidate. When the interview ended, he stood. Thank you for your time, Dr. Vale. This fellowship, it would mean everything. I looked at him, this bright, promising young man who carried his father's name and none of his father's visible guilt. The stone in my chest felt heavier than ever. The committee will deliberate, I said, giving nothing away. You'll hear from us next week. He left, and I sat in the silence of my office, staring at his file. Rejecting him was easy, but was it just? Was it enough? Then I opened my bottom desk drawer. From a locked compartment, I took out a single, faded file. My father's medical records from that final visit. The transcript of Dr. Kane's dismissive notes. The coroner's report. I laid them next to Julian Kane's pristine, promising application. Two legacies sat on my desk. One of neglect, shrouded in a son's admiration. One of grief, forged into relentless excellence. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't about revenge against a boy. It was about accountability for the man who made him. And I had the power to teach. The most devastating lesson of all. I picked up the phone and called the head of the residency program. Schedule Julian Kane's final evaluative session, I said. And clear my morning. I'll be conducting it personally. In the new simulation lab, we're going to run Scenario Gamma. On the other end, there was a stunned silence. Scenario Gamma was notorious. It was a high-stakes, multi-system failure simulation designed to break down even experienced residents. It was brutal, unforgiving, and had never been used on a mere applicant. Dr. Val, are you sure? As for 30-year trauma residents, not fellowships. I'm sure, I said, my eyes on my father's coroner report. I want to see what he's really made of. When the clarity he loves so much becomes a fog. I hung up. The stage was set. Julian Kane wanted to step into my world, the world his father's failure created. So be it. He would walk into the heart of the machine, and I would be the one controlling the pressure. The simulation lab at Mercy General is known as the Crucible. It's where textbook knowledge meets raw, sweat-soaked instinct. Scenario Gamma wasn't just a test, it was a gauntlet. A digitally conjured perfect storm of a patient crashing from a septic infection that masked a rupturing aortic aneurysm with conflicting vitals and a ticking clock. It was designed to simulate chaos, to force impossible choices, and to reveal a candidate's psychological core under fire. No applicant had ever faced it until now. I watched from the observation deck behind one-way glass as Julian Kane was briefed. He looked focused, a slight but confident tension in his shoulders. He'd been told he was being given a unique, complex case to demonstrate his clinical reasoning. He had no idea he was walking into a professionally engineered nightmare. The simulation began. The Manakaina multi-million-dollar piece of engineering that could bleed, breathe, and die was named Mr. Evans. Julian started strong, calm, methodical. He ordered the right initial labs, started broad-spectrum antibiotics, poured the sepsis. He was good, textbook perfect. Then, the first curveball, the simulator nurse, following my remote commands, reported a sudden, sharp chest pain. Julian's brow furrowed. He ordered an EKG. It showed slight abnormalities, but nothing definitive. Could be referred pain from the abdominal sepsis, he muttered to himself, audible through the mic. He went back to focusing on the abdominal. Source. My hand tightened on the control console. Wrong priority. The chest pain was the key. The aneurysm, just like my father's heart condition, screaming for attention while the doctor looked elsewhere. I escalated. I made the mannequin's blood pressure become wildly unstable. I added abnormal breath sounds. The data became a cacophony of disaster. Julian's calm began to fray. He started ordering more tests, scattering his focus. He was treating symptoms, not hunting for the single, unifying cause. He was drowning in the fog. The final move. I had the simulation nurse deliver a rushed, panicked update. Doctor, the patient's wife is on the phone. She says he has a history of a thoracic aortic aneurysm. His previous doctor always warned about it. In that moment, Julian Kane froze. His face, visible in high definition on my monitor, went pale. The history, the missed history, it was the critical piece, handed to him too late. He scrambled, barking orders for a stat CT angiogram for blood pressure control, but the simulation's clock had run out. A flatline tone echoed in the lab. The word simulation terminated. Patient expired flashed on the main screen in stark red letters. He stood in the center of the room, shoulders slumped, staring at the lifeless mannequin. The brilliant candidate had just killed his virtual patient. I saw it then, not just failure, but the dawning, horrifying realization of how he had failed. He'd been given a clue and dismissed it. He'd gotten lost in the noise. I entered the simulation lab. The air was cool, sterile. The sound of the flatline had been silenced, but it hung in the space between us. Dr. Vale, he began, his voice hoarse. I lost the thread. I got fixated on the sepsis and dismissed the cardiac symptoms. I didn't listen to the full story. I walked to the console and called up the simulation log, displaying his every command, every hesitation, in a ruthless timeline. You were given a critical piece of patient history crisis, but by then, your diagnostic momentum was locked. You were already committed to a path. I turned to face him. In medicine, the first impression, the initial diagnosis, it has gravity. It pulls everything toward it, even contradictory evidence. The trick is to fight that gravity, to be willing to be wrong at the start, to save the patient at the end. He nodded, absorbing the lesson, the humiliation of the public failure etching lines on his young face. It was a good lesson, a necessary one. But it wasn't my lesson. Come with me, I said. I led him not to a debriefing room, but through the quiet halls of the hospital, down to the medical archives, a place of old paper and silence. I signed out a file. Not a simulation log, a real one. I placed it on a table between us. You want to know about fighting gravity? About the cost of a locked diagnosis? I opened the file. I slid a photocopy of an ER intake form toward him. The name, Arthur Vale. The date, 10 years ago. The presenting symptom, shortness of breath. The assessing physician, Dr. Robert Kane. The scribbled diagnosis, likely reactive airway. RX, albuterol inhaler. I watched Julian's face as he read, his father's handwriting. Confusion first. Then, a slow, creeping recognition of the surname Vale. His eyes flicked to me. I slid the next page. The coroner's report. Cause of death. Massive myocardial infarction due to severe coronary artery disease. Note, no prior cardiac workup initiated despite symptoms. Prescribed inhaler found on deceased. The color drained from Julian's face completely. He looked from the report to me and back again. The pieces crashed together. The name, Vale, the date, the failure. The simulation. He had just failed a heart condition masked by other symptoms, a missed history. It wasn't just a test. It was a mirror. My father, I said, my voice quiet in the archival silence. Your father dismissed his heart as a wheezing lung. He was fixated on the wrong system. He didn't fight the gravity of his first impression. And my father died on a classroom floor. Julian didn't speak. He just stared at the damning, ancient paperwork, his hands flat on the table as if to steady a world that had just tilted off its axis. His guiding light, his dedicated GP, the foundation of his entire moral and professional journey, was built over a grave. Why? He finally whispered, his voice cracked. Why? Show me this. Why let me interview? Why the simulation? The questions weren't accusatory. They were the sounds of a paradigm shattering. Because you needed to see it, I said, not as a son hearing a story, but as a doctor feeling the cost. You needed to stand in a room where a patient died because of a fixed idea. You needed to feel that panic, that regret, that hollow flatline in your own bones. So you will never, ever be the doctor who creates a file like this. I tapped my father's coroner's report. I took a deep breath, the cold stone in my chest finally. For the first time in a decade, feeling not lighter, but acknowledged. I rejected your fellowship application this morning, Julian. You are a brilliant candidate, but you will not train here. Not in this place that I built because of what your father did. He flinched, but didn't protest. He just nodded, tears of shame and a terrible adult grief finally welling in his eyes. However, I continued, pulling an envelope from my coat. I made calls. Your scores, your intellect, they're real. There's a place for you at Harborview in their cardiology program. It's a good program. Their chief is a friend. He knows this story. He will be watching you, not to punish you, but to ensure you learn the lesson your father never did, that our first duty is not to be right, it is to be thorough, to be afraid of the mistake we might be making. Every single time, I pushed the envelope, the letter of recommendation, and transferred across the table to him, next to his father's fatal error. He looked at it, then at me, utterly broken open. I'm so sorry, Dr. Vale. I don't want your apology, I said, standing. I want your vigilance. Take the lesson. Haunt your own practice with it. Become the doctor your father wasn't. That is the only thing that matters. Now, I left him there, in the quiet archive, sitting between his future and my past. My father died due to a doctor's misdiagnosis. 10 years later, that doctor's son applied to my hospital. I didn't destroy his career. I gave him the truth, and I built his future on the ruins of his father's failure. Revenge is not always annihilation. Sometimes, it's inheritance. I inherited my father's death, and I passed on the weight of it, the brutal, clarifying weight, to the one person who could turn it into a lifetime of atonement. The stone is still in my chest, but now someone else carries its shadow, and in that, there is a kind of peace